All right, 135 on San Diego Sports Leader. It is the Mighty 1090. Darren Smith with you till 3 o'clock and the Scott and BR radio program. They're going to be live today from Charger Training Camp, so tune in for that between 3 and 6 o'clock this afternoon. Let's say hello to Jim Sterk. College football season coming up. I think we are 3 Saturdays away from the start of the college football season. Very exciting stuff. Jim Sterk is the athletic director at San Diego State, and he joins us now in the home of the Aztecs, the Mighty 1090. Jim, good to talk to you.
Hi, Darren. Thanks for having me.
How we doing?
Great. We are just 18 days away from that opener, so it's getting close.
Are you ready?
Not quite, but we'll be.
Will be. Okay, so is it kind of like hosting a major holiday like Thanksgiving where you know you got a bunch of people coming over and you still got a bunch of stuff to do before you actually open the door?
That's exactly right. That's both from a team standpoint, Rocky would tell you that, and from a staffing standpoint, getting things ready.
Well, hey, let me ask before we talk anything about like the major macro topics happening in college athletics. Let me ask you for an update on the basketball facility. How's everything coming along there?
Great. We're going to have an official groundbreaking the 27th, but things are already, there's some dirt being moved, so they've broken out ahead of the official process, if you will. So it's moving along. It should be done by next August.
By next August. Okay, so it won't be operable for this basketball season. It'll be ready for the following basketball season.
Correct.
And is that something now? Does that become a recruiting point for your coaches? I mean, does Brian Dutch or Steve Fisher, they go out there and talk about this facility?
Yeah, it was even with the class that came in this year that started this summer, and that we probably wouldn't have gotten three of those guys if we didn't have plans to have a facility like this.
Well, Jim, there's a bunch going on in your sport. I know it seems like every single year we have a conversation about realignment or going to the Big East or what's happening in college football. Are we ever going to hit the point in college athletics where we don't have these types of conversations? I mean, do you see any hope in sight that we will stop having these conversations?
Not with, the O'Bannon case was, a decision was made on that Friday, and I think there's about 6 others. I was talking to a commissioner, and he thinks the rest of his professional life he'll be in depositions and court cases, but hopefully it doesn't stay that way, but it looks in the near future, the next few years, for sure.
Well, you mentioned the Ed O'Bannon case. That was on Friday afternoon. I don't know if you've had a chance to fully read the 99 pages there that came out, but what does the Ed O'Bannon ruling mean for you as the athletic director at San Diego State? What does it mean for the athletic programs at San Diego State?
Still a good question. I think there's a lot that the NCAA has asked for information back from the judge on that, because they need some qualifications, and then supposedly they'll appeal that, and it'll probably be a lengthy process. But they did, I think the judge did come out in saying that the student athletes need some kind of compensation, and part of the ruling that people really haven't grasped onto that if we move to a cost of education model with our scholarships, then there may not be much more that they have to do with that. Now, she gives a $5,000 or minimum, but she based that on the Pell Grant. Right now, a student athlete can get, in addition to their scholarship, $5,500. And tennis players currently can earn up to $10,000 before they come to school. So there's already ways where students with need can receive benefits like that. And as we look at the cost of education and with the governance, that also came down last week, and the governance of the NCAA and the Division I level is going to have a new kind of a new model in which they can propose legislation. And though they talk about the 65 being in agreement, there's a lot of disagreement within that 65 of how the cost of even a cost of education thing should be determined. Whether it's based on need. Do you set a number? Because every school's cost of education is different. So it's a very, very complicated deal.
We're talking to Jim Sterk. He's the athletic director at San Diego State. But, I realize that we're speaking in generalities on this one, Jim.
Yeah.
But just generally speaking, if in fact this is imposed and San Diego State, in order to keep up with what's happening in college athletics, that you guys would have to pay athletes who play football and men's college basketball. Is that something that literally you are capable of doing under this construct?
Well, I think I think it has to, be determined. I think we're looking at ways, the cost of education that's coming down. That could be a $2,000 to $4,000 per student athlete, and we've been talking about that for a while. Of, what can we do to do that? We've been fortunate enough especially in the last 4 years, where we've really been able to gain support through the community, and our scholarship support has grown by over $2 million a year. I think we can go out and have an initiative and push to get support for the next round of things that we need to do. And I think people like what's going on. I think we've started to really gain the attention of the community, and I think we can continue to grow.
So in other words, it sounds like you have at least been bracing for some sort of impact here, even though we're not even sure what the impact is going to be. I mean, it does sound like at least you have started, maybe not to batten down the hatches, but you've at least thought and somewhat prepared for what might result from all of this.
Yeah, we had initial discussions about, I don't know if it was 2 years ago or so, when the stipend of $2,000 was discussed, and so what were we going to do with that, and how that would impact us. So we have some idea. We don't know exactly, how and how much and when and all of that. But I think we have there'll be with the governance as far as the cost of education, that couldn't be imposed before next season this time. So I think we have another year to figure some things out and what we'll do. And I think, the good thing, we're in a great place. We're in a great city. We've got a lot of support, and it's growing. And I think we can continue to grow.
We're talking to Jim Sterk, San Diego State Athletic Director. So how does this impact you? Again, I realize that we're just theoretically speaking here, Jim, but how does this affect you, San Diego State, State School, Mountain West Conference, versus, let's say, whatever potential impact it might have at USC?
One, they have their television contract with the league gives them a little more resources from that standpoint to be able to absorb something like this, increased costs, if you will, of scholarships. So their TV contract they revenue share about $19 million a year, and we revenue share $1.2 million a year. So some which way that has to be made up. And I think for us, we need to continue to grow. Football has had 4 straight bowl seasons. We need to capture the community and increase our ticket sales for support so that we're able to do some more of these things and continue to build the program. So that's a way. I think, as I said, our donations have really increased, and we need to continue to grow that, and we'll look for other ways that can help us along this way as well.
Do you need a new football venue?
Well, but a new football venue, I think the soonest something like that could happen would be probably 8 years if all the stars align and there weren't any lawsuits of where it was located and things like that. But in the meantime, we want to make Qualcomm, experience as good as it can be, and I think it can really continue to improve. We've done a lot in the past couple seasons, and I think we've really started to create an atmosphere where we have 5,000 to 9,000 students there that really get into it, and our fans are getting behind the team, and I think they're going to have a lot to cheer about this year. So I think we have great momentum, and I want to continue that.
8 years. What are we going to be doing in 8 years? You think we're going to be having the same conversation?
On a stadium? I think it'll be further along. I just don't know which direction it'll be.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if you and I are having this conversation in 8 years, but that's about more me and you than it is about the conversation itself. So the other thing that happened last week, Jim, is the Power 5 conferences voted on autonomy, and they voted in approval of autonomy. What does this mean? I mean, what does it mean that the Power 5 conferences now want to at least have the ability to call their own shots?
Yeah, I think there's areas of autonomy, and I'll kind of list them off: health and wellness, meals and nutrition, financial aid on the scholarship side, expenses as far as student athlete support, with regard to family and awards and different things like that, pre-enrollment support, insurance and career transition, career pursuits. I think they're going to talk about the agents as far as, kids testing the water. I think that's a good one for people to focus on, where we haven't allowed student athletes to go into the draft in basketball or football and then come back out if they weren't drafted. And I think we need to reach some kind of model where they're able to do that, and kind of like the baseball model where they can be drafted, but then they can decide to go to college. And I think that would be better for the students. I don't know how the pro leagues feel about that, but I think we need it from a collegiate standpoint, and so they'll be looking at that. I think transfer, that was one that was brought up, but it's not really an area where they were given autonomy in that area, so they need to abide by the current Division I rules on transfers, and anything that the Power Five, if you will, adopt. It's permissive for the rest of Division I. So if we decide to do that, we can be a part of that as well.
So, okay, that's an interesting point that I haven't heard brought up enough. So if the Power Five does it, it doesn't mean that it just affects the schools from the Power Five. That trickles down to you guys, to everybody else who plays in Division I.
Correct.
All right.
To the USDs of the world, to that don't have scholarship football. There's a lot of rules that'll be coming, and so I think each conference, each individual school will be able to decide on that.
Is the end game, in your opinion, that the NCAA as a governing body will be phased out of college athletics?
It was interesting. I just had a retreat with my staff, and I had former AD from Cal, John Kasser, here, and he initially was working for the CFA when they were fighting with the NCAA, and he said at that point in the early 80s they almost broke away there, except they couldn't get the Pac-10 and Big Ten to agree on it, but the rest of the SEC and those conferences were ready to break away from the NCAA. There might be a time where that happens, but I don't think it's in the near future right now, as far as from what I can see, because I think there is an override period on this governance and legislation change. I think there's 60 days, and that clock has already started. I don't think there will be enough votes against it. I think they need 75 Division I schools to vote against this governance model. Then it'll kick into play. October, they'll submit kind of legislation, and in January, they'll adopt some legislation.
What would ever happen to the NCAA tournament if that ever were to happen?
Yeah, that contract, I mean, it's a huge, great contract with CBS, and I don't know. I haven't seen that contract, but I would think it would blow that contract up, and then something else would have to take place. But really, people don't realize that Division I basketball tournament funds all the championships for Division II, Division III, all the programming that the NCAA does. So that's a very important piece, that basketball tournament, and the TV revenue from that funds all of that.
Oh, I know. Everybody just thinks that the NCAA tournament just puts all these millions of dollars in people's pockets. I mean, that funds the Division III track and field championships. There are so many different layers to it that people never bring up in these types of conversations.
That's exactly right. And so I think there's a lot of, no one really wanted to, and I've talked to a number of ADs that, peers that I've worked with, and no one really wanted to break up Division I. They wanted to try to make it work within the system, and partially it's because of that, because they truly believe in what's going on, and the education of all our student athletes, and not getting away from that. And I think if you moved away from the NCAA, that would be a potential problem.
Hey, Jim, before I ask just some specifics about FanFest coming up this weekend, you mentioned earlier the difference between the conference money, the dollars in the Pac-12, $19 million in the Pac-12 per school for football, 1.2 if you're in the Mountain West. So everybody would understand. I mean, is it still the long-term goal of San Diego State, or maybe even the short-term goal of San Diego State, to end up in one of those power conferences? What's more likely, that you guys will find yourself in the Mountain West on economic equal footing as the Power Five conferences, or that you will end up in one of those power conferences?
Well, I can't predict what's going to happen, but I think within the Mountain West Conference, people have been able to succeed nationally, and I think that's our goal. You've seen our basketball program do that. I think football can do the same thing. When I hired Rocky Long, or when he was here as a defensive coordinator, and we sat down and talked about football program, he felt that San Diego State can be the next TCU, and that means going to a major bowl game. And now, if we're that school, we would go to a New Year's Day bowl game, and that would be very, very special. And I think we can do that. Whether or not, I think a lot of the conferences have locked up their TV deals, the rights, so you may not see them see movement within the next 8 to 10 years. But if they don't get into that football championship, those top 4 positions, then you may see some conferences do some things and move around. You may see them go to an 8-team playoff if a couple conferences don't make it into that national playoff, those top 4 spots. So I think it's settled down as far as realignment and all that. What we can do is be the best we can be, and we have ratings on what San Diego State does in the county here, and we dominate the TV live games here, and whether it's Pac-12 coming in or SEC, people are watching San Diego State, and it's exciting to see the growth of the program.
Well, comes up this weekend. Aztec Fan Fest is going to be this Saturday at Qualcomm Stadium. The gates open up at noon. Scrimmage is going to be at 1:30. Admission and parking is free. They're going to have food trucks, inflatable activities for kids, and appearances for other athletic other Aztec athletic teams, I should say. The band, the dance team, everything sounds like it's all coming together this weekend. You guys ready for this Saturday?
Yeah, we're getting ready for that. It should be a great day and fun, and I'm looking forward. I've been traveling and haven't seen enough practices, so I'm looking forward to a great scrimmage as well. And I think people will be impressed with the team.
August 30th, Northern Arizona at Qualcomm Stadium. People can buy season tickets. They start at just $66. GoAztecs.com, or they can go to the Qualcomm Stadium ticket office. I'm sure people can find out more information this weekend if they go, correct?
Absolutely. And thanks for that information out there.
Hey, Jim, appreciate it. I know that sometimes we run the risk of losing people, but it's an important topic in college athletics, especially for what, I really do. I feel like it's really an important topic for you guys at San Diego State, what's happening in college sports.
Yeah, it's a critical time, and I think we need to continue to assert ourselves and be at the top of our league and continue to win championships, and that's very important. So whatever happens, we need to be ready for that.
Jim, thanks so much. Appreciate it. We'll see you this weekend.
All right. Thanks, Darren.